Welcome back to the Diet Recovery Club podcast. Look, number two, we've done it. This is a big deal.
This is a huge
We did
deal.
one, and then
And
here's our
you're listening to the second one. Maybe you skipped the first one. That's totally
maybe.
cool. No
Yeah.
judgment. Um,
I
yeah.
guess if you did skip it, we'll tell you who we are real quick. Uh, Unless you recognize our voices by now, which clearly you should.
Yeah.
But I'm Keri. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I am in Tampa, Florida. I have a private practice here. And you, Madame, are?
Madame, I love that.
Madame.
I'm Allison. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm also located in Florida. I'm in Fernandina Beach right now. And yeah, I have a private practice as well. So we are so excited to be here and to be back.
It's the dream
Uh,
team,
the dream team.
bringing you everything diet recovery related.
Yeah. Yeah, the original Diet Recovery Club is Keri and I. We are, yeah, we're grateful that you found us. As we kind of previewed in our first episode, we are hoping to create a space that feels safe for those who maybe fell through the cracks of the eating disorder world or getting diagnosed with an eating disorder or have struggled with dieting on and off their whole life, or just like for a period of time. We, want this space to feel like a community. We want it to feel like it's yours. And we hope to bring a whole bunch of topics to discuss as we continue this little journey, which we love to hate that word.
Journey. Love a good journey. One day we'll think of something better and it'll be really exciting and then everyone's going to start using it. It's gonna be
Yeah.
great.
But like what can
Anyway,
replace
I
it?
don't
I'll go on thesaurus.com. It'll be fun.
If you
Oh,
have any suggestions, please send them our way because it's rough.
what to say
It's
in
rough
this
thinking of new
journey.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Journey.
hard. Your brain is like so wired, I feel like, to say the same stuff, and then it is so hard sometimes to undo that.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. But
Well, what were we talking about? Last time we were recapping our Thanksgivings, and before we kind of get into, I guess what we really wanted to mostly chat about today, which is about like New Year's resolutions and our workbook. I think we were trying to think about what else could we share and what could be helpful about maybe like upcoming. I know we've got some holidays here in December coming up in a few weeks. Obviously, there's lots of different holidays that people celebrate.
yep. Yep.
Yeah. You want to go first? Tell us about your
Yeah.
what you
Sure.
got coming up and any diet recovery related
Topics.
things on your
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I think for me, this time of year is always associated with a boatload of family time. And, that's always mostly wonderful. There's always, ebbs and flows to that, but I always, pretty much look forward to seeing family. In my family, we celebrate Christmas, and traditionally, growing up, I am Slovak and Polish. My husband is also Slovak, so my whole family like adores him for that very reason because, you know, he's one of us. But our like Slovak traditional Christmas meal or Christmas Eve meal that we celebrate with my dad's side is like pretty much 98% carbohydrates. Like it's all like it's like a beige table of food.
Who loves the beige food? For sure.
Me too. We've got, an occasional smattering of some protein in there, but like there's not a veggie to be found. And in history, well, an old version of Allison, I found that very distressing. Again, our lovely culture teaches us that we should be having 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables throughout the day. And like this Christmas meal was never that. And so, yeah, it's I think now coming to terms with and learning that like this meal is a part of my culture. It's a part of my family. It's tradition. What we're eating and why we're eating it feels completely separated from diet culture and from that entity. It feels like, I don't know, again, we talk about all the reasons that we eat, and this meal specifically, it's not like my favorite meal by any means. We've got like kibasi and pierogies and
I love some pierogies.
girl, same. We, growing up too, the adults in our family used to always say that we were having Christmas chicken. It was never chicken, it was fish. It was like breaded, like flounder, like white fish. But so they would call it Christmas chicken so the kids would eat it because the minute we heard fish, it was like, no. Obviously now as an adult, they still call it Christmas chicken, like jokingly, lovingly.
So funny.
Um,
I have a cousin who, shout out to my cousin Joey, who in my mind is like 3 years old, but he's actually a doctor
oh,
now and way smarter than me, I'm sure. Um, he would only eat, I forget what it was, one kind of protein, like chicken, and then they tried to give him turkey or something else or some other protein, and they used to call it wild chicken of the Bronx. Up in New York. I like will always remember that.
oh my
Like
god,
trick him into eating some other thing.
wild chicken.
Yay, weird family
It's
stuff.
like chicken of the sea kind of vibe, right?
Yeah.
Like things
Uh-huh.
we do to make food sound appealing
Yeah.
to those around us. I mean, it's hilarious.
Hmm.
That's fantastic. But so yeah, this whole beige meal of carbs and protein. I mean, it's just there's also babulki, which is like little dough balls. Like it's like we actually use pizza dough and roll them up, bake them, and they're covered with honey and like it's like honey and water, so it's like a little bit thinner than honey.
Hmm.
Delightful.
That
But like
sounds really good.
the entire meal is beige.
Yeah.
And so again, it's a whole lot of carbs. There's always language from select few about said beige meal. Um, I always, it's funny because it's not a particularly enjoyable meal. It doesn't feel particularly cohesive. Like it's just, but we've all come to expect it. It's such a tradition. It's such a thing. That now in, again, past years, like when I haven't been with my family, my full family to celebrate, I've recreated this meal for my husband and I. And, again, we could have infused and added things or tweaked things, but it felt more important to maintain the integrity of this beige meal. So yeah, it's just, I think it's coming to terms with like carbs are okay, carbs are safe. We are all nicer with carbohydrates in our body. Um, and that again, like we're eating for a lot of different reasons. And on this very specific day, it's more important for us to be together and to have this like funny, quirky tradition than to be obsessing about how my body looks or how much I'm eating or the fact that there's not a vegetable in sight. Um, so yeah, my
Yeah.
reflections.
It makes me think about like if you listen to our last episode, we were talked a little bit about emotional eating and
Mm,
how like the idea that like yes, it's wonderful to eat for hunger. Like we if we have hunger cues and can tune in with those, like it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. And food is culture, right? And it's memories and it's love and it's like our families caring for each other. And all of that is super important. And that a wonderful reason to eat like those cultural foods you're talking about, it sounds like, is because it's like, and the reason you probably make it when your family's not there is it's super nostalgic.
yeah. Oh, for
Like it
sure.
makes you feel good, right? Like, and then it would be okay if you eat that, like you said, even if you're not adding in like, some broccoli on
Thanks.
top of it or whatever
Yeah.
else. Or
Well,
even protein or whatever. Like it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
No, yeah, like preferred protein. I mean, it's funny, right? Because like, is this actually a legitimate Slovak meal? Unsure. I like talked to my husband about this, who's like legitimately like born and raised in Slovakia, and like bits and pieces of it are authentic.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't even really matter. It's the fact that like this is my family's thing, and like this is what we do.
Your tradition.
Yeah, I have such memories of like through the years, like sitting at the kids' table, right? And like how we were all grossed out once we figured out the Christmas chicken was fish. And again, this like
Yeah.
just transition of what's been added to our plate, what we've grown to love or hate over the years. Um, yeah, it's just I don't know. It's such a different take than again how it used to be, where it was big old dread that oh my gosh, I'm gonna be eating so much food, and like the desire to like definitely push past comfy fullness with these foods that are like really specific to this meal and that we're not having at other times of year ever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's like making the choice, right? Like, and again, this is like getting more into the nuance around how to decide how much to eat and like how you want to feel and all of that. But, without getting too far into it, it's like it's okay to choose to eat past your fullness, right? We're not trying to find some magical place of eating when appropriate level of hunger and stopping when comfortably satisfied. Like, yes, that's wonderful. And I'm sure that for the two of us, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
But because we've practiced and been able to do it, but like, it's okay to choose. I mean, I talk to clients about how, like, I love a cannoli. I'm not
Oh,
Italian, I'm Jewish, but like, if I love some good Italian food. And cannolis are like my favorite dessert. And I don't have them often. And I love to bake, but man, those are way too complicated for even
yeah.
me to even attempt. But there is an Italian place here where I live that is so good, and they have the best cannoli ever. And I will choose to eat past my fullness to eat that cannoli because I like love the cannoli, and it is a purposeful choice of I'm really full right now, but like I'm gonna have it, or I take it home or whatever. But like I can make that choice, or like we can make that choice for ourselves. That's okay.
Yeah. Agreed. Completely agree. We all have that thing that
Yeah.
we are gonna want consistently and we're gonna want more of it. Gosh, I think even too, like this, like just again thinking about the holiday and thinking about the sensation of eating past fullness and how over the years what I have even worn to holidays has shifted in an effort to like give less cares, give less shits about the aesthetic piece of it and like how
Mm.
I look, and more so about the physical comfort and ensuring, knowing that like, ooh, there's a decent chance that like I may, for whatever reason, eat past my comfortable fullness point. I want my body to feel comfortable regardless. And I don't know, like, again, just having that foresight, having that awareness of like that matters more. Me being physically comfortable matters more than how I photograph
Yeah.
on one day.
Stretchy pants all the way.
Oh, for sure.
I feel
Yeah.
like even since like the pandemic, like I just love some leggings.
Yeah.
Like really, I
Yeah.
it's fine. Like
Yeah.
wear the leggings, people.
Yeah.
Like they're
Elastic
pants. They
bands.
count. They are pants.
For
Appropriate
sure.
pants.
Or like a super stretchy sweater dress. Like I'm going up north to New Jersey for the holidays, and like a nice stretchy sweater dress is my jam because like
Yeah.
first of all, no pants, and warm, cozy, flexible. Like love it. Still kind of cute.
Yeah.
Still feels a little dressy if you have the family that like requires you to dress up for the holiday, which like why? Um, but
Yeah.
you know, what are you?
Well, speaking of beige foods, I mean, I feel like most of
Yeah.
it, most like culturally Jewish meals are pretty beige also. I mean, so like Hanukkah, so Hanukkah's different than Christmas. It like I think because it sometimes falls around the same time of year, it's like I think sometimes Jewish people feel like their kids are left out because of Christmas, so we like make it into this bigger thing. But traditionally, it's actually not like a super major holiday, but it's fun. The like traditional foods for Hanukkah are like things like fried foods, like people have probably heard of like latkes, which are fried like potato pancakes. There's this like story, the Hanukkah stories about like finding an oil and it should have only lasted for a night, but it lasted 8 nights. So like you celebrate with lots of that. So I love making latkes. I don't make them a lot because they make your house stink. So like you will smell like potato and onions until
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
for weeks and weeks. But I make them. I have no qualms about frying. Like I have no qualms about deep frying those latkes. Like people would try to come up with healthier alternatives. And like, listen, if you prefer that taste and that's easier for you, like go for it. Trader Joe's actually makes a pretty good latke you
Oh,
can heat up in the
good to
in the
know.
oven. But I don't know, it's fun. Like I find it fun to get together with usually my friends 'cause we don't have really a lot of family where we live now, and we I make a whole giant thing of latkes, and people make comments about how bad they are and how we can't have them past that day. I love making a shit ton and bringing them home and like eating them all week, and then I'm like over the latkes and don't want to eat them anymore because it's just like too many of them.
Fatigue.
Um, but yeah, like the typical, holiday commenting about foods, and typically they're like the really delicious foods because they
Yeah.
taste really yummy.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think I'm just like in the place now where if the people I'm with want to make comments about the food, which they might not, but if they do, then that's okay. Then they can do that, and I can be happy and eat the amount of latkes that I would like to eat. And again, probably no protein, and also people make like jelly donuts, and it will probably be just like a giant carb
Oh,
fest. Um,
Terry, a jelly donut
so
sounds.
good.
I have not had a jelly donut and I can't. That sounds divine.
Yeah, like a powdered jelly donut. So
Yeah.
good. I guess the other thing I was thinking about while you were talking about like your traditions was just this, even the idea of like the food, like the recommendations, right? On like you said, like a five. I was gonna say the food pyramid, but it's not a
Oh
pyramid
my god,
anymore. It's something else now.
it's my
The my plate, yes. Like it totally, yeah.
yeah.
Like that. And again, this is a bigger conversation. If anyone's interested in like us talking more about it, that it totally discounts like cultural foods that are not like quote unquote like an
Yes.
American kind of
Yes.
diet, whatever that means.
Whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like demonizing people's cultural foods, like you
Yeah.
know, and especially carbohydrates and the things that are just so important to so many cultures. And yeah, it's like a whole load of
Yeah. Things are
bullshit, basically.
most accessible or like most
Mhm.
enjoyed. Yeah, demonizing it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's even in like during my nutrition education, like you know, I during my masters we had a one course that was called something like cultural nutrition or cultural food, right? To try and have some cultural competency around the ways that of how other people ate in different cultures and religions, and just yeah, the language even then of and like we had our whole lab section where we had to like make recipes that
Mhm.
fell into these cultures and like use different spices, right, and use different cooking methods, and all of them were like healthified.
Yeah.
Like it was like low fat, blah, 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 sour cream, milk, whatever, cheese, and it's
Right.
like this for sure was not
Right.
what was initially intended.
I'm
Like
sure when they were milking those cows, they were requesting the low fat milk. Can
training
this be
fat,
skimmed, please, as it exits? Yeah.
just wild,
Anyways,
right? Mm.
yeah. But yeah, so I guess, what we are trying to say is, again, as we said last time, holidays are hard. It's okay to go into this holiday season kind of feeling a little frazzled. And,
Mm.
I think we talk about how it becomes, unfortunately, especially in the beginning, even a little bit harder when you want to try to think differently, do something different because you're really going to like come up against it. And kind of, I think going in with that mindset of like, this might be hard and this might be uncomfortable, but there's a reason for that. And it's because I'm trying to think a little bit of a different way that might go against like the mainstream way that your
Yeah,
family might be talking about stuff, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
yeah,
It doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it wrong either. It just means that maybe you're looking for something different and like kind of taking stock of something that it's not working
yeah,
for you
yeah.
anymore.
I know a question that we didn't, necessarily talk about beforehand when we were planning out this episode, but something that I feel like comes up a lot with holidays that I'm curious how you handle personally is like photos and the
Mm,
taking of pictures and
yeah.
the like anxiety that that can provoke for some people. And so like how do you deal with that personally? How do you like recommend clients deal with it? Like
Mm,
what do we do about the discomfort that comes with documenting a body?
yeah. This comes up all the time, right? I'm sure you have clients that talk to you about it.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation with a client this past week who's like really trying to work through this. I think again, first of all, like recognizing that there are lots of really good reasons of why you're struggling with this and why maybe it will feel really hard to take photos. I think what I typically try to, I was going to say advise, that's the wrong word. I guess what I ask clients to get curious about, like let's say that you have a picture of an event that you were at or something you were doing, you're in the picture and you're looking at it and you're having like this super negative reaction to it. I love the idea of, and again, you have to like do this up front. You can't like let yourself get really activated, whatever, and then try to like backtrack. Sometimes it's a little bit harder. But if you say to yourself, like, I'm going to go into this experience, I'm going to look at this picture, sidebar, feel free to not look at the pictures if you don't feel like ready to look at the pictures. We don't have to sit and stare at them. That's okay too. But to really try to like take this bird's eye view of the picture, like the reason that the picture got taken was
Mm-hmm.
because you or somebody else wanted to document a moment, a memory, something that felt important that we all know is kind of nice sometimes years later to look back on things. Sometimes people aren't around anymore. Sometimes it's like things are not the same as they used to be, and you want to be able to reflect on that. So to
Yeah.
really take a step back and almost like zoom way out and say to yourself, what is happening in this picture? Right now? Like, what is it that I want to remember that was happening now? What is it that was going on? And it's also okay to sit with like discomfort that's coming up around looking at your body. But I think that sometimes can be like a helpful little,
Yeah.
exercise, something to try. Again, the point of it is not to take away the discomfort, because if you're working through like body image stuff, that's just gonna take
Yeah.
that's gonna take time. But it can be really a really nice practice, and I have found it to be really helpful from people that I've talked about this with. And I actually, the last client I talked to about this, after talking about this, realized that like the next week, like let her boyfriend take pictures of her, like felt good about it. And again, it wasn't like, oh, this is so exciting, I'm going to look at pictures. But
Sure.
even just like opening this door to, this picture doesn't have to be about you and the way you look right now, and like documenting your body at this exact moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think zooming out and just, yeah, remembering why the photo is being taken in the first place. I think too, a lot of what I talk to about with clients is like we take a photo, we immediately like turn the phone around and show the rest of the people what, right? Like, oh, are your eyes open? Da, 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 da. And how often does somebody say, ugh,
Yeah.
oh my God, retake it. That's a terrible, right? Like they say some type of horrible thing about themselves. And so what I advise my client is like, when the photo is taken, what if you didn't look at it immediately? What if like you preserved the fact that like that photo was taken and let it rest? Don't immediately like expose yourself to this possible like upheaval of emotions, right? Like you're gonna feel some type of way. What if we didn't just like immediately look? What if we paused? And what if we honestly like you might never look at that photo again? That photo might have been taken on someone else's phone and they might not share it. Like how do we insulate you a little bit and not in an avoidance way? Because I think a lot of times this people can like just or say that this feels like avoidance of a thing. To me it's really normal to not immediately look at the photo and ask for it to be retaken.
Yeah.
I often say too, like, is there somebody that you trust that you're maybe taking the photo with that can look at the photo, make sure that your eyes are open, right? And like, let it be, right? Um, it's it's hard. It's a hard thing.
Yeah. I feel like it also makes me think about the like responses that we feel like are like the norm, like the thing to do, right? Like the social norm around looking at the picture that someone else has and making the negative comment about yourself, right? Like we are so, sometimes we're so used to doing it. Like I feel like I still catch myself every once in a while saying something to someone, not a direct comment about their body or anything, because I've definitely like talked my brain out of that really ever being appropriate, but saying something like, "Oh, you look so nice today," or like something that just feels like you're making a comment about the way that they look, or when
Yeah.
you really, your intentions are good, but that we're just so used to saying those things. So I think sometimes it's like having to catch yourself and being like, is it that I want to make a comment about the way I look on this picture, or do I feel like that's what I'm supposed to do in this moment because it's what everybody else is doing? And of course we want to fit in and not feel like we're like the odd man out.
Well, it's like it makes me think of. It makes me think of that Mean Girls scene where they're all standing in front of the mirror and like saying stuff about
Yeah.
themselves, like, "Oh, my arm, you did," it," and then they all look at the one girl who's
Yeah.
like hasn't said anything, and she's like, "I have really bad breath in the morning," right? Like something kind of off
Yeah.
kilter. And that's what it feels like. It feels like
Mhm.
okay, everybody's waiting for you to like talk shit about your body,
Yep.
and in reality, your body is the least interesting thing in the room, right? Like, there are so many more interesting things about you and about that photo and about the experience and about the moment. Um, yeah, it's okay to resist the urge to
Yeah.
comment.
I think sometimes it's like a bid for connection, right? Like we
Yeah.
say these things when we're with other people socially because it feels like we're trying to connect, like, hey, we're having this similar experience. I think that's what sometimes makes it
Yeah.
hard. Like, even if you don't want to do it, right? Like, even if you're like, this doesn't feel good to me anymore, it's
You're
easy to,
so
yeah.
right.
So maybe, I guess my advice for that would be to be super compassionate to yourself. That like if you do it and afterwards you're like, damn it, I didn't want to do that. Like, okay, like there, you probably had good reason
Yeah.
for doing that in that moment.
I think too, it's like if we don't comment negatively, then what do we say? And I know at
Yeah.
least I've talked about this with clients too, right? Like if somebody says something positive about the way that they look, they don't believe them,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like no matter what happens, you say something negative, you say something positive, or you say nothing, there is no good outcome there. So it's again, like you said a minute ago, compassion to you on all fronts because this is a hard thing to navigate, and it's whatever your reaction is, whatever your immediate like gut thing is, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah. And then
Mm.
we know after these holidays, dun dun dun, it's time
Yes.
for some New Year's resolutions, right,
Yeah.
Allison? Don't
Uh,
you just, it's like it's already starting,
yeah.
right? Like the
Sure.
whole New Year's. I was actually thinking about this before we got on, that I want to be clear that we are not like anti resolution per se. I think we don't enjoy that word and would prefer like a different word like an intention or something like that. But like, I mean, it makes sense to me that people want to like reflect back on their year and think forward in terms of like how do I want to be this year? Like what do I want to do? What am I not like paying attention to? It's such a natural time
Yeah.
to do that. I mean, I feel like I do that a lot on like Sundays. I'll like look at my
Week.
thing for the week, right? It feels like a natural time, like Monday, like you're starting over somehow in the week. So I think that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with taking a look at how the year has gone and to try to think about, like, are there things you want to do different? So just to be clear, we're not like bashing the idea of it. What we are, I think, very uncomfortable with is the idea of
Mm.
a New Year's resolution specifically centered around dieting, shrinking your body in some way, right? Doing things like for, quote unquote health when it is really something that is like actually detrimental to
Yeah.
you in some like mental or physical way.
Yeah. And this is, I think, too, not not bashing the fact that like people want to change their bodies, right? Like we both have experienced that and still experience that on some occasion, right? Like wanting to change your body is such a normal part of being a human. Not being happy and fully content with your body is a normal part of being a human. And the typical New Year's resolution usually has language in it that is it is like demanding. It is asking you to put everything else aside and only focus all of your energy on this one thing. And if you don't, or if you don't do it the way that you said you would, you are a failure. You are not doing it right. Like for example, a New Year's resolution I have made in past has been I'm going to exercise 5 days out of the week. First of all, okay, like in theory, that's a lovely idea to move my body numerous times in a week. Cool, right? Like I could make that sound much different now than how I knew I intended it then. It was like if you don't go to the gym, you're a big old loser. You're gonna get fat. You're lazy, right? Like all of those other messages that come with hating a body, and again wanting to manipulate and change a body. So again, like changing your body, we get it. It's a normal experience. It's a human experience. Um, Perhaps this coming year, the language you want the language to feel different. You want it to feel like a different experience when you're looking ahead. Knowing that in the past, these New Year's resolutions have not felt super stellar come February, March, or even January. You're not feeling super great when you're even like setting this goal or setting this intention. Trust your gut on that.
Yeah, like we don't even want you to make a resolution that you're going to somehow, even the idea of like my resolution is just stop dieting and to stop doing something this way. And then if you don't quite get it right, whatever that looks like in your mind right now, that also somehow you failed, right? Like it kind of goes in both
Ways.
directions. It's very different, I think, to say, I'm going to make this resolution to quit dieting and like do something different versus I'm setting my intention to get really curious and to start exploring the ways in which this has like impacted my life and what I would like for myself moving forward. Like it just sounds so different. Like there's no way that you can mess up if you're letting yourself
Yeah.
like get curious and notice things and start to like experiment a little bit with doing something different.
Yeah.
Um, it makes me think about like start when like trying to think back to like for me when I started trying to do something different, right? So there was like all this like super chronic dieting for so many years, and then I can remember picking up like, and I feel like I've talked about this so many times, like picked up the intuitive eating book. Somehow I found it Read it, was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. There's like a totally different way to think about it. Felt like deep in my soul that I was like, wow, this feels like a way better option
Yeah.
than what I'm doing right now because it feels so torturous. I feel like I was gonna say did it, whatever that means. I feel like I like played around with that idea for a couple of months and then went back on a diet, right? Like I went back and dieted for probably another maybe few years. I felt like I got pregnant in there somewhere and then didn't really come back around to it for a couple of years, right? Like I didn't fail because it didn't stick or whatever. I think at the time I just wasn't ready
Yeah.
somehow for it. Like I hadn't really proved it to myself yet that like that was what I needed. It just didn't feel right, I guess, at that moment.
Or maybe like you bought into the idea of it, but
Yeah.
maybe it was one of those moments too of like, this might work for someone else, but for me,
Yeah.
right? And we have this sensation of like, I've tried everything, so this is definitely not going to work
Mhm.
either.
Right.
So that makes sense to me. And also, again, you did not fail. If anything, it feels like, yeah, you got really curious about the experience of like interacting with food differently, going back to the way you had been interacting with food, like dieting, restricting, whatever. And like then the awareness of, ooh, this doesn't feel super great either.
Yeah.
Where do I go from here? Um, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think we go back to the big theme of the workbook that we've created, which is like, why are we doing this in the first place, right? Like, what purpose is dieting serving for you? Like, what is it giving you? What is it taking away? And getting really comfortable with the why. What is the reason for quitting dieting? Because you could want to quit dieting for 47,000 reasons. It's costly. It's not evidence based. It's, you feel like crap every time you start and end. The self esteem damage, right? Like you're sick of contributing to the $1 billion industry. Take your pick, right? But at the end of the day, those are all well and good. But what about you specifically? Like what has dieting taken away, given you? What have you learned about yourself? What cycles do you find yourself falling in and out of? Where are the red flags for you as far as dieting behaviors? I mean, again, there's a lot we can explore here, but getting really comfy with the why are we trying to quit dieting? What, you know, why does it not feel good anymore?
Yeah, and we were really clear, like when we wrote the workbook in the beginning that, and like say it in the workbook that you might be coming, like downloading it and thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get all the tips and tricks of specifically like what to do to get myself out of this. And listen, we got plenty of tips and tricks and we'll do episodes about that. And when we do our course, right, like it's gonna dive like deeper into that kind of stuff because we do think it is helpful to hear that. But before you start, like Alison was saying, you have to understand why you're doing it. If you just dive in without giving any thought to why am I here? What is happening for me? Like, how am I feeling about it? Am I having resistance to this? Is there a part of me that's really like scared shitless to do this? That's the stuff that can help you kind of move forward. And that's probably what I needed, like the original time that I
Yeah.
picked up that book is that I really didn't. And the book, it does have you go through some of that, but it's not like I really took the time to sit and think about it. I just wanted to know what to do. And that is valid and totally makes sense. And we know that there is other work that we feel like is really helpful to do first, right? Like what's important to me, right? Like what do other people think? What are they going to think if I start doing something like this?
Yeah.
And to really kind of reflect upon that. And we think that can help with some of the like the pitfalls and things that you're going to run into that are going to make it hard because it is not an easy road to do something different than what the majority of people around you are doing.
Yeah. And if we establish your why, right? And in the workbook we've got some things on values, right? And really looking into who you are and what, again, how dieting has or hasn't served you. If we establish that stuff pretty clearly early on, that's going to come in handy every time that you hit a pitfall and you're contemplating going back to dieting, right? Like every time that a new thing comes out, because we know that diets are like trends, and not just crash diets. Like I think when we talk about diets, a lot of times people will name crash diets or like cleanses, right? In general, dieting, like full stop, all of it. Something new is always coming out, something old is always coming back. It's going to come back and it's going to sound really appealing. And if we have a really well established, like, defense, if you will, right? If we have this proof and this evidence, it can be supportive in keeping you, continuing to like act with in alignment with your values, right? It helps you not fall back into that pattern or cycle of dieting.
Yeah. You might not even be sure, right? Like I think Alison and I used to think about some of the examples that we gave around like what even is dieting. I think even that can feel really confusing for people. I think people think that they quote unquote like don't deserve help somehow for what they're going through. Again, when something is so normalized in like society and the culture that we live in, it's sometimes hard to really think about like is this an issue for me. So the workbook really kind of helps take you through some of that, and we give lots of examples of like some things are like a fill-in, some of it is a huge checklist of are you experiencing any of this stuff. And it's obviously we're never going to be able to talk about every single thing, but we think that it'll be really validating, especially if you're not sure
Yeah.
if you're impacted, how impacted you are. So it can be helpful, we think, for people who really are like in a place of, I really want to do something about this, or if you're coming from a place of, oh gosh, like, am I? Like, is there an issue here, right? Because I say to clients all the time, like, nothing's a problem unless it's a problem, right? Like, maybe you're doing fine and maybe, it's working for you, but if you have any inclination that it's not working for you, we think that the workbook can be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, and if you're not sure, workbook is free right now.
Right.
So like go
Yes.
give it a download because truly this is why free resources are so helpful, because even if you're again on the fence or you're like I don't know. A friend
Yeah.
sent me this podcast. A friend sent me this workbook. I'm not sure if this is me. I find it really interesting that they sent this to me. Again, that curiosity can really come in handy.
Yeah.
So,
So if you want to download it, check our either on Instagram or on Facebook. We have a link tree in there that has a direct link to the download. If we're on our newsletter list already, then we've been sending out the link to it in there. If you want to get on our newsletter list, you can also sign up for that at the link in our bio.
yeah. And our handle on Instagram is at Diet
Yes.
Recovery Club, and same with Facebook. Or
Yeah.
email, which you can always reach out to us if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you're having trouble with any of this lovely technology stuff. dietrecoveryclub@gmail.com. And know that whatever your experience is with New Year's, with dieting, with holidays, we get it. We see you. This is hard. Be nice to yourself. Damn it.
And don't forget, we're going live on Instagram on Thursday, December 19th at 7 p.m. We did
Easter.
one before. Eastern, yes, Eastern time. Forget not everyone is here with us. If you go onto our Instagram, you can watch. We did one a couple of weeks ago. And we really set them up and we did have some really good questions last time. You can submit questions to us, like Allison said, to our email, dietrecoveryclub@gmail.com, or go on Instagram and send us a DM and let us know if you have questions. And we're happy. Our hope for doing the lives was to be able to answer questions that people have, whether you've downloaded the workbook or not. If you have any questions about anything or suggestions or things you want to hear us talking about, that is your time
Yeah.
for us to answer your questions. So you
Yeah.
can join us there.
Yeah. So as always, thank you for listening. Thanks for hearing us rant. And we look forward to chatting again in our next episode.
Ranting some more. We will have episodes. We're already Allison and I mostly sit around and rant about things that we think are like total bullshit. So we will make sure that there are some good episodes about
Some non
just
ranting ones.
ranting. Yeah,
But
ranting away.
we appreciate you tuning in,
Yeah.
and we'll chat with you soon.
All right.
Bye for
Yeah.
now.
Bye.